It's not only Colleen who has two jobs today, I've got two jobs as well. I've been on the data projector. But thank you, Colleen, for leading our worship, and thank you, Nettie, for the reading. You know, Colleen's, as worship leader, has given us a very good summary of what I have to say. And especially that last hymn. I love that last hymn. I considered it for the hymn after the sermon. I thought, better not, because I can't hear that tune without wanting to dance. Especially if it played on an Irish fiddle and a little bit faster, you know. And let me tell you, my dancing is right up there with my singing. You don't want to know. Okay. We heard a reading that, if you've looked in your news sheet, is not the set lectionary reading for today. The set lectionary reading was Isaiah 9, and it's one of the gems of the Old Testament. But it's also quoted pretty much in the New Testament reading, so I thought, scrap that. I want to focus on the second half of the New Testament reading anyway, and so I chose a different reading from Isaiah, another gem. Now, this is from Isaiah chapter 6. We've had 5 chapters of Isaiah laying it on the line to the Jewish people. He said things like, "You're a sinful nation, a breed of evildoers. And see how the faithful city has become a harlot." So he's really laid it on the line for them. You would think that he's in pretty good with God, wouldn't you? He's God's prophet. He's really telling it like it is. Reminds me a little bit of a neighbour of mine who said, "I don't need to go to church. God and I are like that, and I'm on top." Did not end well for him. He lost his wife, beautiful wife and family, and I don't know where he is now. But, you know, that sort of attitude tends to lead to a fall. So, in the reading we see a vision of God in the temple. He's surrounded by seraphs, archangels. The Jewish plural is seraphim, and they are fearsome creatures. When they appear to people, the first words they almost always say are, "Do not be afraid." Okay? They have eyes of fire. They have 3 sets of wings. With one, they cover their face, because to look on the face of God would destroy them. Terrible and powerful as they are, even they cannot look on the face of God. With the second pair, they cover their feet. Now, feet in the Bible is sometimes a euphemism for the naughty bits. And it is in this case, and if you read Ruth chapter 3, it throws a whole new light on the relationship of Ruth and what she's up to. I'm not going to mention cherubs, the reading doesn't, but cherubs are not fat little babies with tiny little wings, let me tell you. And Isaiah has an epiphany, a realization. He's had 5 chapters of laying God's message on the line, and he's not fit to be in the presence of God. You know, I glimpse a face, I'm doomed. I glimpse the face of God, and I'm a sinful man from a sinful people. I expect to die for this. But God can fix anything. A glowing red-hot coal is taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. One of the seraphs picks it up in his fingers. Doesn't bother him, he's a seraph. And he brings it to the lips of Uzziah and touches his lips with it and says, your guilt is taken away and your sin is atoned for. Ouch. It gives us perhaps an idea of how painful it can be to deal with sin. So, after that, when the Lord calls for a volunteer, Isaiah puts up his hands and says, here I am, send me. And he, of course, goes on to be one of the great prophets of the Old Testament. Now let's turn to our New Testament reading, because it's from Matthew and it's the beginning of Jesus' message, beginning of Jesus' preaching in Galilee. And the first half of it quotes what is the set Old Testament reading. Didn't need to hear it twice, did you? I want to focus on the second part. You might have guessed this just from the title that's on the front of the news sheet, if nowhere else. Jesus called Simon, we usually think of him as Peter, but Simon, Shimon, is his Jewish name. Peter comes from a Greek word petros, meaning a rock, but he's far from a rock at this point. And Andrew, and then James and John. This is an almost direct quote from Mark chapter 1, verses 16 to 20. But there has to be some backstory, doesn't it? Just imagine someone comes along, even Jesus, and just says to you, you don't know it's Jesus, and said to you, leave your job, leave your family, I've got something better for you to do. Really? There's got to be a bit more to the story. Excuse me. And if we look at Luke chapter 5, there is a bit more to the story. And I'll just move this one. Sorry about that. There's a little bit of water under here. Oh, lovely. One of the first signs of nervousness, the dry throat. Yes, because in Luke's version, the two boats are up on the beach. And the fishermen, having fished all night, got nowhere, mending their nets for the next time. And so when Jesus commandeers Peter's boat as a preaching platform, he says, just pull out into the water, I'm going to use your boat. Peter's pretty happy for the diversion. And so Jesus preaches. It doesn't actually say what he preaches about, but we know from the first half of the passage and other places that his general message was, the kingdom of God is here for you. Then he surprises Peter. He says, just pull out over there, toss your nets in. We're professional fishermen, you're not. We fished all night and caught nothing. There is nothing out there. But you asked, we'll go and do it. Toss us in the nets. Tries to pull them in. They're too full. Peter is a man of action. He springs into action, calls James and John to bring their boats out. Oh dear, this is bad. Try again. Sorry. And the two of them just managed to get this great load of fish into the two boats, and the two boats are full, almost to sinking. And then Peter's brain sort of kicks in and says, what have I just seen? What have I just witnessed? Only God could do such a thing. We couldn't, we fished all night. It must be, oh my Lord. And his response is very much the same as Isaiah's. Go away from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man. And Jesus says, that's okay, I've got a job for you. And for Peter, this is the word of God, the command of God. There is no refusing it. And that makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it? So, but there is a difference. Isaiah was ready for the task. He'd had a lot of practice. He was quite able. The next 3 years would show just how unable these simple men were for the task that they were being given. They would blow it again and again and again. And that tells us something. It tells us that Jesus can work with willing but inept, probably much more easily than he can work with quite competent but unwilling. And this is a message for us all. What would the gospel look like if Peter, Andrew, James and John had said no? The church has a problem with people saying no. It has a problem with people saying no to filling a seat on Sunday morning, let's be honest. The number of people in church in South Australia is on a steady decline, and while some churches are doing fairly well, we're doing sort of average. It's overall not good. Getting people to actually do something is much harder still. But this isn't only a problem for the church, it's a problem for sporting groups, it's a problem for community groups, it's a problem for charities. You know, where once charities were run by volunteers, now they're much more run by paid people. You can't get the volunteers. Now, I have a little personal story here. As a young man, I had absolutely no confidence in my ability in social situations, or in fact in any situation outside of a maths book. Now, you might look at me now and say, I don't believe that, but let me tell you, this is very much true. I would no more have stood up here talking to you people than I would have jumped into a volcano. It's a little bit of false humility, actually, you know, oh, I couldn't do that. But the times that I felt that God was sort of pushing me to do something and I said, okay, I'll give it a go, have been some of the richest, most fulfilling times of my life. Because when God calls, then God equips and God blesses. But there's always a but. A little bit of caution. This boy who didn't think he was up for anything became addicted. This is more addictive than you can imagine if you haven't been there. And God does not want to overload us and burn us out. So before you accept that job that you think that God is pushing you into, pray about it very seriously. Oh, and I've got lost a page. In my younger days, I did take on rather more than I should have, rather more than I could handle, to the detriment of both my service and my family. I'm still paying the price for some of that. These days, I'm better at saying no. I've pulled out of a few things in the church and outside of church. The things I feel called to do within the church tend to centre around teaching. I like Sunday school, I like messy church, I like leading a small group. These things give me energy. I don't mind supporting Jeff on the data projector because we're very short of people who put their hand up for that. I still do the breakfasts at the school. It is getting harder to get up at that time of the morning, I must say, and I'm thinking, do I really need to do this? But you're okay for the moment, Clive. That's just me being lazy, right?
You're doing a good job, Peter.
Thank you. So, examine your own life. What is God calling you to do inside the church and out? And what is God calling you not to do? Okay? You're never too young, never too old, never too frail or never too sick to do something. Even if it's praying for others. I say even if. Wow, the prayer chain does wonderful things for people in this church. So, give it a go and you will be blessed. Now, our final song is, thank you Ron, and thank you musicians, I the Lord of sea and sky, and for your benefit I will turn the microphone on.